heard you fundraise to get here. What was it you actually did?
What I actually did was I fundraised in a way that I wanted it to benefit the entire community. So with my fundraising tactics, I got my friends who are artists and musicians to help me, because 4 months ago I just went and told the editor and the other vendors that I was going to Scotland, and they're like, what? And I'm going to the conference. If you guys want to come with me, you're welcome. But I'd already made up my mind that that's where I'm going. And so my friends, though, they're used to me making these kind of decisions, and they're like, okay, so how are you going to get there? And I said, I'm going to sell the Street Newz, and every penny from now until I go to the conference is going to be for that conference trip. And so when I made that mind up, the editor said, oh, how are you going to do this? I said, well, I got friends who are artists and, people that are regular buyers for the Street Newz who, always say that they love stopping and chatting with me. And so when I started telling people, they're like, how much do you need to get there? And I don't know, enough for a plane ticket and an or a hotel room, and then everybody was like, okay, so people were sending me, $10 and $20, and I sold maybe about, I don't know how many hundreds of Street Newz.
You said that you've been housed for 18 months. How has your life changed since you got housed and went off the street? It must have changed massively.
Well, it did and it didn't. Like, I had always lived in a house, like in a basement or an upstairs suite, and so when I moved this time, I moved from being in a house to living in my car for a short time, and then I moved from my car to living in a flat, like in an apartment building, and I've never lived in an apartment building before. So I'm like, okay, I had to give up my dog, which was really kind of sad. In the city of Victoria, we have a zero vacancy rate. We've had a zero vacancy rate for several years now, so I just said, okay, well, me and my partner were just like, we have a job, we can find a place, pretty easy, but that didn't happen. So for the first time in our lives, we were employed and homeless at the same time. But at the same time that I was let go from my house, I was also fired from my job for speaking out about what I saw was a violation against women. They fired a manager for the building I was in and brought in a man to manage a women's homeless shelter, and I questioned that, and apparently you're not supposed to question things like this. But, I did, and next thing you know is that you're out, you're gone, you don't question why companies do what they do. But when I did, I found out, very quickly how much of a blacklisted person I was, because the unemployment office said, we're going to have to send you back to school because you don't have your grade 12, you don't have your certificates to university. I had all these barriers. I said, I knew I had these barriers, but it was like, okay, we're going to send you back to school and we're going to get you your grade 12 certificate. And so I went from writing at a grade 7 level all the way to a grade 12 in less than 2 years. Plus I got my first year of university introductory, and the instructor that I had told me that I was writing at a grade 7 level, but my oral intellect was at a 3rd year university.
Could you tell us about your work with Victoria Street Newz?
Well, that's all tied in because, it's like Rose also is really energized about a lot of things, especially around social issues like housing and homelessness. And so it was like I started writing about the lack of affordable housing in Victoria based on my own experience. And so when I started writing, I realized that, okay, well, the unemployment insurance was running out and I better find a job. I don't have a university degree, I don't have certificates in anything. And my friends said, well, why don't you try selling the street news? And I went, well, it'll do for spare change, right? Well, pretty soon spare change went from, you know, just having spare change for coffee to actually having change so I could pay my rent, put gas in the car, put, you know, shoes on my feet and a jacket.
So you spoke in the seminars earlier about Robert Picton, and we were just wondering, I mean, if you could tell us about your role in that campaign for those lost women, what part you played in that?
My role was very small. My role was that I kept seeing a common ground between Victoria and Vancouver. And that common ground was that we had a huge number of women just go missing. Women that were involved with homelessness and the sex trade, women who were drug addicted or living in poverty. And we kept listening to people that were coming into our shelters saying, oh, I just seen so-and-so, they were on the ferry, or I just saw them in Vancouver, or I just saw them in this hotel room. And so we started tracking where the women were being reported as last seen. And the common ground that I saw was that it's a very easy transit system to ride from one city to another. And I thought, okay, well, what are the slim chances of, you know, the women that are missing from Victoria ending up on the streets in Vancouver? It was almost 100%. So when I went to Vancouver and I started looking for some of these women on the streets, I started talking to the women in the women's drop-in centers and in the emergency shelters, and the staff there were telling me the same thing, that they had noticed that their women were missing. And so they told me they were going to the police and that they were not being heard by the police. And then I'm like, well, maybe if we had another person from the outside the Vancouver area go and tell the police. Well, they said, well, why don't you go and tell them? So, you know, I went with these women, other frontline workers, to tell the police, we have a whole list of women missing here. And the police, you know, maybe 50 or 60 times would slam the door on us and tell us to go away. You know, we just have to accept that these women are transient and that, you know, they'll move around and they'll surface eventually. And as the years went on, it never happened. And as the years went on, more women kept going missing. Eventually we realized that the police were a part of the problem, that they really were not taking our missing person reports seriously, that when we would fill out the report that somebody was missing, that report was going from the desk to the garbage. Just like when they picked up Robert Picton, by that time, you know, that they picked him up, there were several thousand women missing. It didn't make it into the mainstream media until he was arrested, and when he was only arrested on another charge, when they went to the farm to see if he had rifles or something like that. And they stumbled upon this dumping ground. And it was like, oh. Then it became sensational news. And we're like, but, you know, for 10, 15, and 20 years prior to that, the local free press had been printing the stories. And so,
do you feel that if the mainstream media had taken more of a role into it, it would have helped, there would have been less women missing?
yes, definitely, that we would have been able to save a few hundred women's lives, that those women would be alive and be able to enjoy seeing their children grow up and their grandchildren grow up. With Robert Picton, there was 26 women's DNA found on his farm. Those 26 women, between them all, there was 96 children. There's 96 children who have grown up not knowing what happened to their mother. I think there was like 36 grandchildren who don't know what happened to their grandmother. So that's Canada's shame, is that Canada has been negligent to First Nations people on their failure of human rights, and to women from all over the world. Every single woman is in danger when they go to visit places like Vancouver and Toronto and Victoria. If they are a woman who is a visible minority, or if they're disabled, they are in danger. Well, I'm going to tell you that we're here. We're here, and I'm going to encourage the homeless to come out and make an honest day's living, and to educate the tourist about where they spend their money. If they're sincere about eradicating poverty, then ensure that you buy souvenirs from the local people, because when you buy local, you promote people out of poverty, and you promote people in a sense that is like, wow, they take pride in who they are and what they've had to accomplish, right? So buy local, grow local. That's my value, right? It's like, okay, so I'm educating you by encouraging you to buy the local things.
Okay, Rosanne, thank you very much for doing this. Thank you.
Okay.